Imagine a majestic mansion where luxury and wealth cannot hide the shadow of a devastating secret. When a millionaire family decides to adopt an orphan boy, everything seems perfect. But as the arrival of a new biological baby approaches, a nightmare begins to unfold. The adoptive mother, who seemed loving and kind, reveals a cruel and ruthless side, treating the orphan with contempt and making him a target of her fury. The father, torn between his love for his two sons, cannot see the dark plan she has hatched. The tension increases, and the boy's life hangs by a thread. You will be left with your heart in your throat, following this story that combines pain, betrayal, and hope. Don't miss a second of this shocking plot, and find out what happens when the truth comes to light, and the family's fate is challenged in an unexpected way. First, I would really like it if you are not already subscribed to my channel, do so. It helps me a lot to continue bringing these stories. It was a winter afternoon when Alex, an orphan boy with large, expressive eyes, was taken to the imposing mansion of the millionaire family. He felt small in the face of the grandeur of that house, with its high walls and windows that shone like jewels in the sunlight. The trees surrounding the property swayed gently in the wind, as if whispering ancient secrets. As Alex walked through the iron gates and into the vast garden, he felt a mixture of fear and hope. He had always dreamed of having a family, of being loved and cared for, and now that dream seemed within his reach. The driver took him to the main door, a majestic structure of carved wood, where Lady Margaret, his new adoptive mother, was waiting for him. Lady Margaret was an elegant-looking woman, always impeccably dressed. Her blue eyes were cold and calculating, and her smile, although polite, conveyed no warmth. She looked Alex up and down as if assessing him, and gave a slight nod, indicating that he could enter. "Welcome, Alex," she said, her tone more formal than genuinely welcoming. "I hope you feel comfortable here." Alex murmured a shy thank you and followed Lady Margaret into the mansion. The hallways were wide and decorated with artwork and antique furniture, every detail exuding luxury. To Alex, it all seemed like something out of a fairy tale, but Lady Margaret's gaze made him feel out of place, like a misplaced piece in a puzzle. In the living room, Lord Edward, Lady Margaret's husband and now Alex's adoptive father, was waiting. Unlike his wife, Lord Edward had a warm expression and a genuine smile that lit up the room. He stood up quickly upon seeing Alex and wrapped him in an affectionate hug. "Alex, welcome to our family," Lord Edward said, his voice thick with emotion. "I hope you feel at home here. We have much love to give you." Feeling a little more at ease, Alex returned the hug. He could feel the sincerity in Lord Edward's words, and it warmed his heart. However, Lady Margaret's disapproving gaze hung over them like a shadow, making it clear that not everyone in the household shared his enthusiasm. The first few days at the mansion were a whirlwind of emotions for Alex. He explored the lush gardens, played with toys he never imagined he would have, and began to get to know the staff, who treated him kindly. However, whenever Lady Margaret was around, Alex felt a chill run down his spine. She regarded him with disdain, as if he were an intrusion into her perfect life. Everything changed dramatically when months later, Lady Margaret gave birth to her own son, a beautiful baby boy named Charles. Lord Edward's joy seemed doubled, while Lady Margaret, now his biological mother, showed Alex a love and affection she had never shown before. The difference in treatment became even more evident. While Charles was pampered with attention and gifts, Alex was ignored and sometimes scolded for trivial matters. Lady Margaret did not hide her dislike and often made cruel comments, which Lord Edward did not notice, as he was often busy with his business. Alex, despite everything, tried to keep hope alive in his heart. He clung to the moments he spent with Lord Edward, who treated him like a true son. However, the shadow of Lady Margaret's rejection and contempt were always present, making his life in the mansion a mix of dreams and nightmares. While Alex tried to find his place in that family, little did he know that Lady Margaret was already beginning to plan a way to get rid of him forever. She would not allow her biological son to share Lord Edward's love and attention with an orphan. And so, a dark plot began to take shape in the millionaire's mansion, putting Alex's future and happiness at risk. The sun shone softly through the curtains of the millionaire mansion on that special morning. The soft sound of birds singing in the garden seemed to announce the arrival of a new day full of anticipation. Lady Margaret was about to give birth, and the mansion was in a frenzy of preparations. The servants ran from one place to the other, adjusting every detail for the arrival of the new member of the family. When baby Charles was finally born, it was as if a new light had been turned on in the house. Lord Edward was radiant with happiness, holding his son in his arms with a smile that lit up his face. "He's perfect, Margaret," he said, filled with emotion. Lady Margaret, still lying in bed, looked at Charles with a deep love in her eyes, something Alex had never seen before. In the days that followed, the house was filled with visitors, gifts, and congratulations. Lord Edward's joy seemed to be contagious to everyone, except Alex. He watched from afar, with a mixture of curiosity and sadness. Lady Margaret, now a biological mother, was completely absorbed in caring for Charles, and her attitude towards Alex changed drastically. Before, Lady Margaret had not been particularly affectionate with Alex, but now she had become cold and distant, almost cruel. While she spent hours rocking and singing to Charles, Alex was left aside, like a forgotten piece of furniture. He still remembered the nights at the orphanage, where even with few resources, the caretakers always had a smile and a hug to offer. One night, during dinner, Alex tried to tell her about his day at school, hoping for some attention. "Mom, today I managed to solve that difficult math problem you helped me with," he began, but was interrupted by Lady Margaret. "Alex, can you please pass the salad?" she said, without even looking at him, her eyes fixed on Charles, who was on Lord Edward's lap. Alex felt a pang in his heart, but obeyed, passing the salad in silence. Lord Edward, sensing Alex's discomfort, tried to include the boy in the conversation. "Alex, that's great. Tell me more about the math problem," he prompted with an encouraging smile. But Lady Margaret quickly changed the subject, turning her attention back to Charles. As time went on, the situation only got worse. Lady Margaret began giving Alex tasks that had previously been the responsibility of the servants. "Alex, go get the firewood," she would order, even though it was raining outside. "Alex, look after your brother while I get some rest," she would say, leaving him in charge of Charles, who often cried inconsolably. Despite everything, Alex did his best. He cared for Charles with all the affection he could, trying to see the baby as a brother and not as the cause of his sadness. He remembered the words of his biological mother before she passed away. "Always be kind, Alex, even when the world is not kind to you." One day, Alex was in the garden, sitting near the dollhouse he loved so much. He held one of the small dolls, imagining a story where he and Charles were heroes, saving the day together. Lord Edward approached silently, sitting next to Alex. "Alex, I know things have been difficult," he said softly, "but I want you to know that you are very important to me. I love you as if you were my own son." Alex looked at Lord Edward, his eyes filling with tears. "I love you too, Daddy," he replied, his voice trembling. Lord Edward hugged him tightly, as if to protect Alex from all the pain and rejection he was feeling. "We will get through this together, Alex. I promise," he whispered. As Alex felt the warmth of Lord Edward's embrace, he allowed himself to believe that, despite all the hardships, there would be a place for him in this family. But deep down, he knew that there would be many challenges ahead, especially with Lady Margaret determined to keep him away. Life at Millionaire's Manor was far from a fairy tale for Alex, but he had hope. Hope that one day he would be accepted and loved fully, not only by Lord Edward, but by the entire family. And with this hope in his heart, Alex was determined to continue fighting for his place in the family, no matter how much Lady Margaret tried to push him away. The atmosphere at Millionaire's Manor began to change in subtle, but significant ways after Charles was born. Lady Margaret, now completely devoted to her biological son, began to treat Alex with increasing coldness, which soon turned into outright cruelty. "Alex, go clean the stables. Now," Lady Margaret ordered one morning, without even looking at him. Alex, accustomed to the luxury and comfort of the house, was surprised by the task. The stables were large and full of the family's horses, requiring hours of hard work to keep them clean. While Alex worked hard, sweating and with sore hands, Lady Margaret cared for Charles with a delicacy he had never experienced. Every day, Alex's list of chores grew. He was tasked with chopping wood, cleaning the pool, washing the dishes, and even tending the garden. Tasks that had previously been the responsibility of the servants now fell on his shoulders. Despite the harsh treatment, Alex never complained. He remembered the words of his birth mother, who had taught him to be strong and resilient. He tried to keep hope alive, believing that one day he would be accepted as part of the family. Lord Edward noticed the change. He watched Alex, increasingly tired and haggard, and felt a deep ache in his heart. He knew something was wrong, but every time he tried to talk to Lady Margaret, she would change the subject or minimize the situation. "Margaret, I think you are being too hard on Alex," he said one evening over dinner. "He is just a boy." Lady Margaret, holding Charles in her arms, replied coldly, "Edward, Alex needs to learn to be responsible. He cannot expect everything to be done for him." Lord Edward sighed in frustration. "But he is just a child, Margaret. He does not deserve to be treated like this." "He is not our son, Edward," Lady Margaret replied, with a harshness that made Lord Edward's heart ache. "Charles is our son. He is the one who needs our attention and care." While the conversation was going on, Alex was in the kitchen, finishing the dishes. He could hear his adoptive parents arguing and felt a lump in his throat. He knew that Lord Edward worried about him, but he also knew that Lady Margaret was in charge of the house. One afternoon, while Lady Margaret was relaxing in the drawing room, Alex was in the garden, struggling to pull weeds in the blazing sun. His fingers were dirty and raw, but he kept working, trying to ignore the pain. Lord Edward found him there and knelt down beside him. "Alex, why didn't you tell me that Margaret was making you do all this work?" he asked, concern in his eyes. Alex looked at him, his eyes wide and sad. "I didn't mean to cause trouble, Daddy. I know she's very busy with Charles." Lord Edward felt a deep pain at hearing those words. He hugged Alex, feeling the weight of responsibility. "You don't deserve this, Alex. I'll talk to Margaret again. I promise things will get better." But Lady Margaret was determined. She saw Alex as a nuisance, someone who took away the attention that should have been Charles's. She began to find ways to punish Alex for every little mistake. If he left a dirty dish or forgot to do a chore, she would punish him severely. One day, when Alex accidentally spilled juice on the dinner table, Lady Margaret exploded. "How can you be so clumsy?" she screamed. "Go to your room without dinner." Alex, with tears in his eyes, ran to his room. He lay down on the bed, hugging his pillow, trying to stifle his sobs. He felt alone and helpless, but hope still burned in his heart. He knew that Lord Edward loved him and believed that one day everything would change. As night fell over the millionaire's mansion, Lord Edward sat in his study, thinking of a way to protect Alex. He knew he had to act, but Lady Margaret's influence was powerful. He had to find a way to ensure that Alex was treated with the love and respect he deserved. The following days were difficult, but Alex found strength in Lord Edward's small kindnesses. Every smile, every word of encouragement, were like lights in the darkness. And although Lady Margaret continued to treat him cruelly, Alex promised himself that he would not give up. He knew that his place in this family could still be won, and he would fight for it with all his strength. Alex's days at Millionaire's Mansion began to turn into a true nightmare. With each dawn, he woke with a feeling of growing despair, feeling the weight of Lady Margaret's indifference and cruelty. The exhausting tasks she imposed on him were only the tip of the iceberg. The real torment lay in her secret plans to get rid of him once and for all. Lady Margaret, now completely absorbed by her love for her biological son, Charles, saw Alex as an obstacle. She did not want to share Lord Edward's attention, or the family inheritance, with a boy she had never truly accepted. With each day, she became more determined to find a way to remove Alex from their lives. One night, while everyone was asleep, Lady Margaret met with her private solicitor in the drawing room of the mansion. The curtains were drawn and the room was lit only by the soft light of candles. "We must find a way to send Alex away," she whispered with frightening coldness. "I want you to look for a boarding school, or an orphanage, anywhere that will take him back." The solicitor, a man with a stern face and calculating eyes, nodded. "Yes, ma'am. I will begin searching immediately," he replied as he jotted down instructions. Meanwhile, Alex, unaware of Lady Margaret's sinister plans, tried to stay strong. He clung to the moments of affection and support from Lord Edward, who, even though busy with his responsibilities, never failed to show love for the boy. One sunny afternoon, Lord Edward took Alex and Charles for a walk in the park. They ran, played and laughed together, and for a brief moment, Alex felt like part of a real family. But these moments of happiness were interrupted by the dark reality of the mansion. Lady Margaret continued to find ways to punish Alex. One time she wrongly accused Alex of breaking a valuable porcelain figurine. "This is unacceptable," she shouted. "You are a clumsy and ungrateful man. Go to your room and stay there until I decide what to do with you." Alex, with tears in his eyes, ran upstairs. He locked himself in his room and lay down on his bed, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders. He knew he hadn't broken the statuette, but he also knew there was no point in arguing with Lady Margaret. She was determined to see him fail. One night, while Alex was in his room, he heard a strange noise coming from the hallway. Curious, he opened the door and saw Lady Margaret talking to a man he didn't recognize. They spoke in low voices, but he could hear a few words that terrified him. "He's going to be taken tomorrow," Lady Margaret said. "Get him ready to go to that horrible place. I don't want to see him anymore." Alex, with his heart racing, went back to his room and closed the door carefully. He knew Lady Margaret was talking about him. Fear and sadness mixed together, and he felt more alone than ever. He needed to find a way out of this situation, but he didn't know how. The next morning, Alex woke up with a sense of urgency. He knew that this could be his last day at the manor, and he needed to act quickly. He went to Lord Edward, who was in the study, and tried to tell him what he had heard. "Papa, Lady Margaret is planning to send me away," he said, his voice shaking. Lord Edward looked at Alex in surprise. "What are you saying, Alex?" "I heard her talking to a man last night. She said I'm going to be taken to a horrible place today," Alex explained desperately. Lord Edward frowned, trying to process the information. "Don't worry, Alex. I'll fix this. You're not going anywhere." With hope in his heart, Alex watched as Lord Edward got up and went to speak to Lady Margaret. The argument was intense, and Alex could hear the shouts through the walls. "You can't do this, Margaret. Alex is our son too," Lord Edward said firmly. Lady Margaret, furious, retorted, "He was never our son. I don't want him here. He has to go." But Lord Edward was not about to give in. He returned to the office where Alex was waiting anxiously. "I promise, Alex, you won't go anywhere. I'll find a solution," he said, hugging the boy. The next few days were difficult, but Lord Edward began to look for ways to protect Alex legally. He consulted lawyers and sought support from influential friends. He was determined to ensure that Alex was safe and treated with the love and respect he deserved. Meanwhile, Lady Margaret, frustrated that she could not get rid of Alex so easily, redoubled her efforts to make his life unbearable. She continued to give him grueling tasks and treat him with indifference, but Alex, strengthened by Lord Edward's support, found the strength to resist. The battle was far from over, but Alex knew he was no longer alone. He had a father who loved him and was willing to fight for him. And with that hope in his heart, he would face any challenge that lay ahead. Lord Edward was beginning to sense that something was deeply wrong. He had always had an idealistic view of Lady Margaret, but the changes in her behavior toward Alex were alarming. Increasingly, he saw signs of cruelty and manipulation, and this left him worried and confused. He knew he had to intervene to protect Alex, but he also feared his wife's reaction. One night, while Lord Edward was in his office reviewing some documents, he heard a muffled scream coming from Alex's room. Without hesitation, he rushed to see what was happening. When he got there, he found Alex huddled in a corner, tears streaming down his face, and Lady Margaret standing over him looking furious. "Margaret, what are you doing?" Lord Edward demanded, his blood boiling. "He broke a valuable vase. That boy is a disaster, Edward. We can't go on like this," Lady Margaret shouted, pointing to the broken pieces of porcelain scattered across the floor. "That doesn't justify you treating him like this," Lord Edward replied, trying to remain calm. He approached Alex and hugged him, feeling the boy's pain and fear. "Alex, it's okay. Let's clean this up together." Lady Margaret, seeing Edward's compassion, became even more irritated. "You're spoiling him. He needs to learn to be responsible for his actions." "Not like that, Margaret," Lord Edward said firmly. "We are a family. Alex deserves to be treated with love and respect. From that moment on, Lord Edward began to monitor Lady Margaret's interactions with Alex more closely. He observed how she delegated the most difficult and humiliating tasks to the boy, and how her treatment of Charles was drastically different. With each passing day, his wife's image changed from that of a loving woman to a cold and calculating figure. One day, Lord Edward decided it was time to confront Lady Margaret directly. He found her in the drawing room tending to Charles and asked to speak privately. "Margaret, we need to talk about Alex." She sighed, already expecting another argument. "What now, Edward? I have noticed how you have been treating him. This cannot continue. Alex is our son and he deserves to be loved and cared for," he said, trying to remain calm. "He is not my son," she replied coldly, "and he never will be. I only want to protect Charles and make sure he has everything he needs." "That does not justify the way you are treating Alex," Lord Edward insisted. "He is a boy, Margaret. He needs love and guidance, not cruelty." "Then what do you suggest? That I treat him as if he were my own son? That will never happen," Lady Margaret said dismissively. "Then perhaps it would be best if you stepped away for a while," Lord Edward suggested, surprising them both with his words. "I cannot let you continue to hurt Alex." Lady Margaret was silent for a moment, processing what she had just heard. "You are sending me away?" she asked incredulously. "I am asking you to reflect on your actions. If you truly love our family, you will understand that Alex needs to be protected," Lord Edward said. She glared at him, but with a hint of fear. "I can't believe you're doing this," she said before leaving the room, slamming the door behind her. For the next few days, Lady Margaret became a recluse, spending most of her time in her room. Lord Edward took advantage of this time to be more present in Alex's life. They spent more time together talking, playing games, and building a stronger bond. Alex began to smile more, finally feeling protected and loved. One night, as Lord Edward was putting Alex to bed, the boy looked at him with eyes full of gratitude. "Thank you, Daddy. I know it's hard, but I'm glad you're here." "I'll always be here for you, Alex," Lord Edward replied, holding the boy's hand. "And I promise we'll find a way to be a happy family." The battle was far from over, but Lord Edward was determined to protect Alex at any cost. He knew he would face many challenges ahead, especially with Lady Margaret, but he was ready to fight for his adopted son. And with each passing day, Alex felt stronger, knowing that he had a father who loved him unconditionally and was willing to do anything to ensure his well-being. The days at the millionaire mansion were far from peaceful. The tension between Lord Edward and Lady Margaret was increasing, especially with Alex's constant presence, who became a symbol of discord. However, an unexpected turn of events was about to change the course of this story. One afternoon, while Alex was helping the gardener tend to the flowers, he found an old trunk buried under an oak tree in the garden. Curious, he called Lord Edward, who immediately realized that the trunk belonged to Lady Margaret. Intrigued, Lord Edward decided to take the trunk inside the mansion and open its contents in private. Upon opening the trunk, Lord Edward found a collection of old letters, diaries, and photographs that revealed a dark secret from Lady Margaret's past. Upon reading the letters, he discovered that, as a young woman, Lady Margaret had become pregnant and given birth to a child. However, her wealthy and influential family considered this an unacceptable scandal. They forced her to give the baby up for adoption, vowing never to speak of it again. The letters revealed the despair and pain that Lady Margaret had felt upon being separated from her son. She had been forced to bury her feelings and move on as if nothing had happened. The loss and pent-up grief had turned into bitterness and anger, which she now unfairly directed at Alex. With a heavy heart, Lord Edward decided to confront Lady Margaret with his discoveries. He found her in her bedroom where she sat, staring out the window with a blank expression. He placed the trunk in front of her and said, "Margaret, I found this in the garden. We need to talk." She looked at the trunk, and upon seeing the items inside, her expression changed from surprise to deep sadness. "Where did you find this?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Alex found it while he was helping in the garden," Lord Edward replied. "Margaret, why did you never tell me about this?" She looked at him with tears in her eyes. "I have never been able to talk about it, Edward. It has been the greatest pain of my life, and I have done everything I could to bury it, but I never seem to be able to." "That explains a lot," Lord Edward said softly. "The way you treat Alex. It is as if he is a constant reminder of the child you lost." Lady Margaret began to cry, tears streaming down her face. "I'm not a bad person, Edward. I just can't handle the pain. And every time I see Alex, I feel it all over again." Lord Edward held her close, feeling the depth of her pain. "We need to work through this together, Margaret. Alex doesn't deserve to suffer for something that isn't his fault. He's just a boy who needs love." She nodded, sobbing. I know. I don't know how to fix this, but I'm willing to try." Over the next few days, Lady Margaret began to make a conscious effort to change. She apologized to Alex and began to treat him more kindly. It was a slow and difficult process, but with Lord Edward's support, she began to face her inner demons and heal the wounds of her past. Alex, for his part, though initially suspicious, began to notice the change in Lady Margaret. He accepted her apology and tried to forgive her, understanding that her pain was deep and complex. The revelation of Lady Margaret's dark secret brought new perspective to the family. They began to work together to overcome the traumas of the past and build a more harmonious future. And little by little, the millionaire mansion stopped being a place of pain and sadness, transforming into a home of hope and redemption. The journey was far from over, but the family was more united than ever, ready to face any challenge that lay ahead. And so, with a renewed heart, Alex found his place in the family, knowing that, despite all the difficulties, he was loved and valued. Alex was growing up quickly, and as the years went by, curiosity about his origins began to awaken within him. Life in the millionaire mansion was full of comfort and love, especially after the reconciliation between Lady Margaret and Lord Edward. But Alex felt that something was missing. He did not know exactly what it was, but a restlessness grew in his heart. One day, while exploring the attic of the mansion, Alex found an old wooden box with his name engraved on it. With trembling hands, he opened the box and found documents of his adoption, along with a letter. The letter, written by his biological mother, revealed the love and pain she felt when giving him up for adoption, in the hope that he would have a better life. "Dear Alex, if you are reading this letter, it means that you have grown up and, I hope, found happiness. When you were born, I was in a very difficult situation and could not care for you the way you deserved. It was the most painful decision of my life, but I wanted you to have a chance to be loved and cared for. I hope that one day you can forgive me and understand that everything I did was out of love for you. With all my love, your birth mother." Alex read the letter over and over, tears streaming down his face. He felt torn between the love he received from the millionaire family and the desire to know his true identity. He decided that he needed to talk to his adoptive parents about what he had discovered. That evening, Alex came downstairs with the box in his hands and found Lady Margaret and Lord Edward in the living room. They were sitting together reading a book. Alex came over and placed the box on the table in front of them. "I found this in the attic," he said, his voice shaking. "It's about my adoption." Lady Margaret and Lord Edward exchanged worried glances. Lady Margaret was the first to speak. "We knew this day would come, Alex. We never wanted to hide anything from you. We wanted to wait until you were ready to know the truth." Alex took a deep breath and said, "I read the letter. I know my birth mother loved me and wanted the best for me, but I don't know what to do now. I feel torn between the love I have for you and the need to understand who I really am." Lord Edward walked over and placed his hand on Alex's shoulder. "My son, the love we have for you is unconditional. Nothing will change that. We understand that you want to know your origins, and we would support whatever decision you make." Lady Margaret, with tears in her eyes, said, "Alex, I know I wasn't the perfect mother at first, but you have become an essential part of our family. I want you to know that we are here for you, no matter what." Alex felt a wave of gratitude and relief. "Thank you, Mom. Thank you, Dad. I love you. I just need to understand more about my story." Over the next few days, Alex began to investigate further about his birth mother. With Lord Edward's help, he managed to locate some clues that could lead to her. The search was long and full of obstacles, but Alex was determined. Finally, Alex managed to find an address. He traveled to a small town in the countryside, where, according to his discoveries, his birth mother lived. With his heart pounding, he approached a modest house and knocked on the door. A middle-aged woman opened the door. Her eyes filled with tears when she saw Alex. Are you Alex?" she asked, her voice choked with emotion. "Yes," Alex replied, feeling a mixture of nervousness and joy. "It's me. I got your letter." She pulled Alex into a tight hug. "Oh, my dear. I've thought about you every day. I've dreamed of this moment for so many years." Alex felt a wave of overwhelming emotions. "I've thought about you too, and I want to understand more about our story." In the days that followed, Alex spent time getting to know his birth mother. She told him stories about her youth, her struggles, and the immense love she felt for him. He began to understand the circumstances that led her to give him up for adoption and felt a deep connection with her. When he returned to the millionaire mansion, Alex was at peace with himself. He had discovered his roots and at the same time, strengthened the bonds with his adoptive family. He felt complete, knowing that he was loved by all sides. Alex learned that true family is made up of those who love and care for us, no matter the circumstances. And so he moved forward, carrying with him the love of his birth mother and the unwavering support of his adoptive parents, living a life full of hope, understanding, and unity. And so the truth about the millionaire family comes to light, revealing strength and resilience that no one imagined. Alex, facing immense challenges, finds a path to hope and reconciliation, while family bonds are tested and strengthened. If you were moved by this story of overcoming and discovery, subscribe to our channel for more engaging and inspiring narratives. Join us and don't miss any of the next stories that touch the heart and challenge the soul.